So what does DEI mean to me? DEI means that a person's gender, race, religion, language, socioeconomic status, or disability should not and cannot be predictive of their opportunities and outcomes in the education system.
As long as I've worked in or known of the Santa Monica-Malibu Unified School District, it has been committed to equity-based initiatives. These initiatives have largely been inspired by hope, but have resulted in little change. Despite the great effort by extraordinary educators over the last few decades, we still have fallen short of meeting the needs of our Black, Indigenous, and people of color or BIPOC community. Following the murder of George Floyd in 2020, a group of middle school administrators came together in our district, and we decided we would no longer be complicit in a system that benefited some, often at the expense of our BIPOC community. So we partnered with some valued colleagues from Tribacy Consulting to help disrupt the inequities in our system. 2.5 years later, the district's leadership team has organically joined the work. It is important to recognize that systemic racism has been sewn into the fabric of our nation for over 400 years. We inherited this. But this group will no longer stand by and accept the inequities in our system.
The overall goal of the Santa Monica-Malibu Unified School District Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Group is to take a social justice approach to meet the education needs of our students. This is done by acknowledging that our policies and practices create barriers to success and then make a deliberate effort to remove these barriers with the understanding that this is not a zero-sum game. This is good for all students. This will require a collaborative approach that takes different perspectives into account and provides opportunities for inclusion of all stakeholders. This work will be great for kids because as we make deliberate choices to improve our teaching practices and understand the inequities of our educational system, all students will benefit. I'm passionate about improving student achievement. I'm also passionate about supporting teachers, parents, and staff as we grow in our skills to meet the diverse needs of our students.
There are a lot of systems of oppression that exist, and we need this operational lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion to help us understand those systems of oppression and then help us disrupt and fight them so we can provide a better school system for all of our students.
I know that as a teacher, I had many blind spots of kids that, because there were so many in the classroom, you didn't see. Maybe they were quiet or for whatever reason. But this work forces us to put those blind spots in the center. And I am grateful for this district for focusing in on that so that we can really improve achievement for all.
In the fall of 2020, our middle school principals set out to define what we mean when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This framework is summarized accordingly. For diversity, are we creating opportunity and access for students that have been historically marginalized? When we think of equity, in creating the most access and opportunity, which students need to be placed at a higher priority? And finally, for inclusion, what lens are we using in making these decisions? Have we engaged marginalized groups in these decisions? Shortly thereafter, our middle school principals introduced to district leadership 3 questions designed to help ensure our current and proposed practices and policies are equitable for most vulnerable and affected students, therefore being good for all students. These questions are now referred to as the district's DEI litmus test, and they help to operationalize our definitions. They are as follows. Is it good for kids? Is the benefit for some kids at the expense of Black, Indigenous, people of color, otherwise known as BIPOC? Is it sustainable?
I think a litmus test is very important to have in our district when we come up with policies for our district as a whole.
It's important to consider all of the options that can both positively and negatively impact the lives of many kids. And so I think it's a great idea and we should definitely do it.
I think diversity, equity, and inclusion are 3 values that should be expressed and always thought about within schools.
I think it's really good. I think that more people should think about these questions when they're thinking about laws or rules or anything, like especially schools. I think more people should have this mindset.
As a student, it's really important that it benefits me, but also it benefits others that are like me as students, but also across different racial groups, to make sure that everybody is included.
It benefits kids from African American communities, Indian communities, Asian communities.
I think the litmus test is a great way to screen processes, and I think it hits every sort of criteria, and it takes into account how both the kids feel and how long-term a solution or how long-term this can be applied towards. So I think these questions are great.
These are important questions that determine our future and our education.
Not everyone starts from the same area.
There's a big disparity between the groups of students that you'll see across different years, but making sure that it can affect and apply to all of those groups of students year after year after year is really important, to make sure that we don't have to change the program as new students come in.
Even if we have to ask those hard questions, they're important to ask, always.
It creates good conversation that needs to be had in order for our education to be the best it can be.
I mean, I feel like it should have already been a thing. It shouldn't have to come down to this, but I like that it's coming further.
This is how we need to move forward. Awareness is important. Understanding these core values will bring about positive change in our communities.
The Santa Monica-Malibu Unified School District is implementing a DEI rubric as a pathway to systematizing challenges to the current systems through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. The rubric will create better outcomes and opportunities for the SMMUSD community. We understand that this is a journey that requires the ongoing dedication of SMMUSD leadership, staff, parents, and partners, and are committed to embracing this path as a district.
Let's suppose that the gender of the district is 50% male and 50% female. If I was to go to Santa Monica High and Malibu High's calculus classes, and I see that the class makeup is 80% male and 20% female, I would say that that is disproportionate and an area to work on. So if things are right, it should be 50% males and 50% females. So at that point, we need to go figure out why females are not taking calculus. That's just an example where we use to identify areas that we need to work on in the name of equity.
For many generations, we've only focused on achievement through testing to measure how well our students are doing. Unfortunately, what we end up seeing is that there is a learning gap if we only focus on those tests. But it's really looking at students from a deficit mindset rather than an asset mindset. So creating a rubric that truly values the diversity that we have in our classroom, that values different cultures, that values different ways of thinking, really is going to allow for us to see the whole child. And I think creating a rubric to be able to measure that is really our goal as a DEI group.
First is a willingness to acknowledge what it is that we have done in the past and a willingness to change those practices and pedagogy. The second one is identifying and acknowledging blind spots that exist to make positive impact and change within our school community. Third is consistently acknowledging our truths and uncovering things that absolutely shouldn't be a part of any of our students' education or a part of our vocabulary as a school district, and making those changes to impact instruction, social and emotional well-being, and student, staff, and community lives. And finally, creating a sense of belonging for all SMMUSD staff, students, and community members. And most of all, we will have a strong foundation that is built on diversity, equity, and inclusion for our entire school community.
We want all students to acquire the knowledge, attitudes, and skills needed to function effectively in a pluralistic democratic society and to interact, negotiate, and communicate with people from diverse groups to create a civic and moral community that works for the common good. We ask the community to support the district in this effort to bring greater access, equity, and outcomes for all of our students. Our work in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion will continue to take time, require deep reflection, and courage to move us all from hope to change.